Most people who visit Sweden come back changed. Like they saw something they weren't supposed to see, and now they can't unsee it. This is what Sweden actually looks like in 2026. Number 12. The women who quietly intimidate the entire world. Before we talk about anything else, we need to talk about Swedish women. Not because of how they look, because of who they are. Swedish women rank among the most independent in the world, not as a stereotype, but as a lived reality. They earn their own income, split the bill on dates without hesitation, and are more likely to own their apartment before marriage than women in almost any other country. What shocks most visitors isn't their appearance, it's their complete absence of need. No performance, no waiting to be chosen. They move through the world as if the question of whether someone approves simply never occurred to them. Heavy makeup, designer labels, and curated social media aesthetics are quietly looked down upon here. The standard is closer to effortless, practical, grounded, a confidence that doesn't announce itself. Sweden ranks second globally for gender equality. Nearly half of parliament is female. Women lead across business, science, and government, not as exceptions, but as a baseline built into the culture decades ago. For foreign visitors, Swedish women feel simultaneously warm and unreachable. Trust is earned slowly. Connections are chosen deliberately. In a country where a woman never had to depend on anyone, she decides who gets her time, and she takes that decision seriously. Sweden didn't produce strong women. It simply never spent any time telling them they weren't. Number 11. The beauty secret Sweden never needed to advertise. There's a real reason Swedish beauty looks effortless, and genetics is probably the last item on the list. Swedes walk everywhere. They cycle in November rain. They spend weekends in forests and by lakes in temperatures that would keep most people indoors. The average Swede sleeps more, screens less, and eats fewer processed foods than most Western populations. The concept of lagom, a Swedish word meaning roughly just the right amount, runs through every part of daily life, including appearance. Not too much, not too little. Enough. There is no culture of excess here, no public display of wealth. The most respected person in a Swedish room is rarely the most decorated. They are almost always the most grounded. Visitors from cities built on image describe the experience the same way, unsettling at first, then deeply appealing in a way they struggle to explain. Because in a world that rewards performance, a culture that genuinely stopped caring how it looks ends up looking like nothing else. Sweden never built a beauty industry. It built conditions where authenticity had nowhere to hide. Number 10. Parents who leave babies outside in -10 degrees, by choice. Walk through a Swedish city in January. See a row of strollers parked outside a daycare, each containing a sleeping infant, while the temperature sits well below freezing. Your instinct, if you're from anywhere else, is to call someone. In Sweden, that's just nap time. Outdoor infant napping has existed in Scandinavia for over a century. Licensed daycare centers have official outdoor sleep policies. Swedish pediatric research consistently finds reduced sick days, more stable sleep cycles, and stronger immune development in children with regular cold air exposure. In the United States, this practice has triggered child welfare investigations. In Sweden, child welfare organizations recommend it. Swedish children are taught early, before they have the vocabulary to understand it, that the world is not a threat to be avoided. Cold exists. Discomfort exists. The correct response is to put on a coat and go outside anyway. Sweden doesn't protect its children from the cold. It raises them to understand the cold was never the enemy. Number 9. The country that quietly tried to abolish cash. Arrive in Stockholm with a wallet full of kroner, and you will find, within the first hour, that almost nobody wants them. Buses, cafes, churches, parking meters, digital only. The Swish app handles billions of transactions per year, including splitting dinner bills between friends down to the last krona. But here is the part most travel content skips. Sweden's central bank, the Riksbank, one of the oldest in the world, formally debated eliminating physical currency entirely by 2030. Elderly citizens organized against it, arguing that a cashless system excludes people without smartphones or stable banking access. The government engaged with those concerns, then largely proceeded anyway. The real issue underneath the convenience story is trust. A cashless system only holds in a society where citizens trust institutions, institutions trust citizens, and the infrastructure never fails. Sweden already ranks among the least corrupt countries on Earth. That foundation exists here in a way it doesn't in most places. Sweden didn't just remove cash. It tested whether a civilization could run entirely on institutional faith. Number 8. Swedish prisons have a waiting list. Swedish prisons have private rooms, kitchens, gyms, and university-level education programs. Guards use first names. Training focuses on rehabilitation rather than control. None of this is considered progressive in Sweden. It is simply how the system was designed. Sweden's recidivism rate sits around 40%. The United States sees reoffending rates closer to 70% within 5 years of release. The Swedish model costs less and produces measurably better outcomes. The country has closed multiple prisons in recent years, not enough people to fill them. And then there is a detail that stops everyone cold. In documented cases, individuals released from Swedish prisons have formally requested to return, not because they reoffended, but because the stability inside exceeded what was available to them outside. A prison people ask to come back to is either a damning failure of the surrounding society, or proof that rehabilitation actually works when a system commits to it fully. Sweden decided punishment wasn't the point. Then it built a system around that decision. Number 7. What the midnight sun actually does to a person. In northern Sweden, summer produces something the human brain was not built to handle. The sun does not set. Not for days. Not for weeks. Above the Arctic Circle, continuous daylight can stretch 2 full months. Children play outside at midnight in broad light. Time loses its architecture entirely. What travel content rarely mentions is the cost. Stockholm psychiatrists document a predictable seasonal spike in anxiety every June. Not winter depression, but its opposite. Melatonin production collapses. Sleep fragments. Hotels install blackout curtains thick enough to cut out every trace of light. Visitors describe the first week as beautiful. The second is strange, and the third is something that starts to feel like a slow unraveling. Then winter arrives, and the sun disappears in the other direction. Some northern towns see fewer than 4 hours of usable daylight. Roads stay clear. Schools stay open. Trains run on time. Sweden built a civilization between two extremes that would dismantle most societies. It just adapted. Number 6. Every person in Sweden legally owns the wilderness. In Sweden, you can legally walk through a stranger's private land, camp in their field, swim in their lake, and pick fruit from their trees, and they cannot stop you. Sweden didn't make nature a luxury. It made access to it too fundamental to leave in private hands. Number 5. The invisible rule that keeps Sweden from becoming everywhere else. There is no law in Sweden against being wealthy. No cap on earnings. No requirement to be modest. And yet, Ingvar Kamprad, founder of IKEA, for years among the 10 wealthiest people on Earth, took public buses, ate in IKEA cafeterias with regular employees, and drove a 1993 Volvo until he died. Not as theater, because in Swedish culture, any other behavior would have been embarrassing. This is Jantelagen, an unwritten social code built on a single principle. You are not more important than anyone else. Acting as if you are isn't admired. It is the social equivalent of a serious personal failing, met not with anger, but with a quiet, permanent withdrawal of regard. For Americans raised to treat visible success as moral confirmation, Jantelagen is genuinely uncomfortable. But look at the output. Sweden's wealth gap is among the smallest in the developed world. High earners use the same hospitals, schools, and transit as everyone else. The social contract holds because the people with the most to gain from breaking it were raised to find it distasteful. Sweden has the same billionaires as everywhere else. It just built a culture where the loudest thing a wealthy person can do is nothing. Number 4. 10 million people. They built the software running your life. Sweden has roughly the population of North Carolina. It created Spotify, IKEA, Volvo, H&M, Ericsson, Skype, and Minecraft, the best-selling video game in recorded history. Right now, you likely have Swedish software on your phone, Swedish furniture in your home, and Swedish music in your ears. Stockholm produces more billion-dollar tech companies per capita than any city outside Silicon Valley. For a country of 10 million, this stops being an achievement and starts requiring an explanation. Sweden's answer: national broadband infrastructure built in the 1990s, while others were still debating it. An education system focused on independent thinking over standardized performance, and a cultural ease with failure that most societies quietly punish. Swedish companies don't announce their origins. Spotify never led with Stockholm. IKEA doesn't market heritage. They made themselves impossible to live without, then stepped back. Sweden never announced it was building a global empire. It just built one. Number 3. The one night Sweden lets itself go. Sweden, by most visible measures, is a reserved country. Strangers on transit don't talk. Public emotion is unusual. The culture values a considered, protective quiet that takes time to understand. And then, every June, Midsummer arrives. Cities empty in a single weekend. Millions travel to countryside villages and lakesides. Flower crowns appear. Maypoles are raised by entire communities. Songs hundreds of years old are sung at midnight, under full daylight, by people who spent the last 11 months not singing anything in public. Traditional food covers long outdoor tables: pickled herring, new potatoes, smoked salmon, fresh strawberries. Children run barefoot through fields. Adults dance earnestly, without irony, and with tears running down their faces at 1 a.m. Many Swedes will tell you it matters more to them than Christmas. Midsummer isn't just a celebration. It's the exhale of a people who have been holding it together all year, and for one weekend stop. Number 1. Why Sweden makes Americans so uncomfortable. Sweden is safe, wealthy, healthy, and among the most technically advanced societies on Earth. By every standard metric, it performs near the top. It is also the quietest place most Americans will ever stand in. More than half of Stockholm households are single-person, not because people are isolated, but because solitude carries a different meaning here. A distinction between loneliness you didn't choose and quiet you deliberately protect. Swedes pursue the second. They would find the American instinct to fill every silence slightly exhausting. Here is what actually unsettles American visitors once the initial shock wears off. Every Swedish behavior that reads as strange is actually a reflection. But what Sweden represents, the thing visitors carry home, is proof that a society can choose differently. That the way things run in one country is not the way they have to run everywhere. Sweden never claimed to have figured it out. It just made different choices, consistently, for long enough that the results became impossible to ignore. The question it leaves you with isn't really about Sweden. It's whether the life you're living is the one you actually chose, or just the one that was already running when you arrived. Would you trade your life for this one? Tell us below.